Hello and welcome to Two-Way Talk Basketball Podcast, talking about everything basketball from both perspectives. With dual Olympian and NBL champion Mark Worthington and dual Olympian and two times NBL MVP Chris Anstey, hosted by sports presenters Candy Hertz and Nathan Stremple. Let's get into it. Hello, happy Friday, and things seem to be getting a little loose here at the Two-Way Talk Podcast on a Friday. Cheers, guys. A beer for everyone? Have we got a drink to cheers at the screen? Oh, come on. Chris, you had a couple of beers in your hands a moment ago. But it is a Friday, and we hope that you are joining us wherever you are, at work, at home, or both, whatever. Everything's the same in 2020. We hope that you are grabbing a beer and getting ready to dissect round 3, because it has been the longest round of the season. There's going to be 12 games this round, and the first game to kick it off was the grand final rematch. We had Flyers versus the Caps, and given it's the first time that these two teams have met since the grand final, the expectation was that it was going to be a really fiery contest, but the reigning champs decided to put a stamp on their title and outplay the Flyers on both ends of the floor, and they looked like they had a lot of fun doing it too. The Caps kept the Flyers to only 32 points in the first half, with the final score an almost confusing, huge 23-point deficit. Caps at 95 and Flyers at 72, with only Liz and Sarah Blissard scoring in double digits. And given the Flyers have been averaging 98 a game, it makes for an even sweeter victory. In fact, maybe some of that bad juju we were talking about last week with the Boomers has rubbed off onto the Flyers, because they only scored 4 of 18 three-point attempts. The Caps, on the flip side, shared the ball around with 6 teammates in double digits, Mariana Tolo leading the charge with 19 points and 8 rebounds, and notable mention to our new favourite team, Jade Melbourne, nabbing 14 points and 6 assists. But, Chris, the question for us to discuss off the back of this, once again in this podcast, is Liz and her fouls. At halftime, she had 4 fouls. One of those a tech foul. I know we've discussed it a few times, but let's bring this up again. Is it actually got to do more with Liz needing to pull her game together, or is it to do with the refs needing to figure out how to ref Liz?
Yeah, it's both. It's discipline to begin with for Liz. As a dominant big, she's the best player in the league. She needs to take the first 5 minutes of every game that she plays in to understand how the referees are officiating. She can't get emotionally attached to a defensive contest and go and reach, or be a step late defensively to move her feet and get drawn by the ball. On the offensive end, she can't go and just drop her shoulder and charge through someone to make a point. She can do that later in the game. But for me, Liz's goal for the first 5 minutes of any Flyers game needs to be to get through it without one foul. Absolutely, there's some refereeing involved. And I said last week that no referee should punish any player. And Liz is the poster child for this, for being too big or too strong. And she gets penalised. But it's okay to be penalised if you don't have a foul coming into the second quarter, or have one at half time. But as it sits right now, the bad calls that Liz is picking up become her third or fourth, not her first and second. So it goes both ways. And we even saw Michelle Timms on social media bring it up that Liz needs to be more disciplined. She's too good to play undisciplined basketball. The Flyers need her too much. She's such an integral part of this. So it's both. Wortho, I know you've got an opinion, but look, it's frustrating to watch. We all want to see Liz on the court, but at the same time, in the second half here, and I'll jump forward for a second, when she had her 4 fouls and Cheryl Chambers put her back in, you saw her in great defending position. She showed her hands, she moved her feet, she made fundamental post moves and killed Canberra for the first 7 minutes of the third quarter. If she could do that for entire games, she dominates the league. As it is, she can't dominate this league sitting on the bench.
Hey, Wortho, as Chris alluded to, I know you do have an opinion, and welcome back. It's great to have you back, Wortho. But just to feed into your opinion a little more, on that tweet as well, shout out to Damien Arsenis, great supporter of basketball, does a bunch of excellent work with pick and roll, commentates a bunch of WNBL games. So initiating that conversation. Now, Liz is too important to the Flyers because she may be the best player on the planet, but she's too important to the Flyers because of the way their roster's set up as well. And Mariana Tolo emphasised that in a post-game where they said it was important for them that they intended to go at Liz and play her off the floor. When she's off the floor, the Flyers have no option but to play small. They've got to play that small ball lineup with Hay, Blitzars and Jarry all on the floor, none of which are a natural 5. You could maybe even argue none of them are a natural 4. And then with teams that are big, like Griffin and Tolo, or if it's the Boomers and they've got McBeggar and George, that lineup's going to be at a real disadvantage having to play small like that. So Liz is so important to stay on the floor for them, were though. Your thoughts?
Well, I've got a couple. I've missed out on a week, so I've got a lot to say. First, Chris, you did say a couple of weeks ago that we shouldn't punish bigger, stronger, faster. And that is Liz Cambage. She is the most dominant player in this league.
No. Don't add faster.
Sorry, shouldn't have had faster. But she's a beast down there, and no one can stop her. No, she's the best player, if not in the world. I agree that she has a couple of silly fouls, but there has been some atrocious refereeing that's gone to it. Now, there's a few things that go in. Far be it me to be the one to say you shouldn't complain at the refs, because I'm one of the all-time greats to ever do it and get away with it a lot of the times. But on some of the ones that she's not receiving down the other end, she's complaining a lot about getting hit. And they are fouls. They should be rewarding her and her work and not putting her at a disadvantage. I know that you make a great point. The first 5-10 minutes should be no fouls and showing your hands and doing all those things. But there is other plays that she's making that putting the referees in a position to make a call and not rewarding her. Sure. On the flip side, if we're going to talk about Liz Cambage being in that position, we also need to talk about the coaching staff putting her in that position, knowing that she can't play on more than 2 fouls at up to halftime. If she gets a second, I'm sorry, you have to take her off the court, because she will get her third. And what we saw on the weekend, getting frustrated and getting a fourth, just compounds the issue. Every coach has a philosophy of the way that they coach a game and how they react. And with certain individuals, I think it's too much of a risk for Southside. You might not be able to, I know you're just trying to get in, but Chris, you've had your week. Shut up. Yeah. Just listen. You've had your week. All right. She's too important. You saw what she did in the third quarter. Is too important. But if she only has 2 fouls and then does what she does in the third, it rolls into the fourth. I think they stay in touch.
You're repeating what I said, Wertho. You're agreeing with me.
Now, on top of all of that, why are we talking about her when the Canberra Capitals are the team that won and beat them by 20 points? Let's put some respect on their name.
Sure.
Every week we talk about Liz and what she does and all that. Let's say after the Capitals lost game 1 versus Adelaide, when they were seriously undermanned, now they're on a 6-game winning streak, and they are flying at the moment. So besides everything else, let's not talk about Liz. Let's talk about the actual team that won and give full credit to what the Capitals did.
They're on a 4-game winning streak, so we'll give them credit for that.
5, actually.
We're all wrong.
Well, now,
I think it's 6. They dropped.
No, they're going to get to 6. Not yet. You guys are jumping the gun. They're 6 later.
But we haven't talked about it yet. But they win that game.
Yes.
6.
But we're not
They've
there
won 6
yet.
straight. And we talk about the Capitals. Rewind the tape. I've been talking about the Capitals since that first episode.
Let's talk about the Capitals for a minute.
Goris, coach of the year.
Mariana Tolo came out and said, like you said, we're going to attack Liz Cambage. That's the plan. And you've just described Cheryl Chambers' issue. She can't play her best player if she's got 2 fouls. That's ridiculous. You need to be more disciplined. You need to be able to play your best player with 2 fouls. That's not a Cheryl Chambers problem. That's a Liz Cambage problem. She needs to be more disciplined. And if you do pick up your 3rd, you certainly can't pick up your 4th with a technical foul. If this is a playoff game, that costs a team the season. They have to be better than that. I think Cheryl Chambers did the right thing by understanding and teaching Liz the consequences of her action. And I hope that she understands that and learns from it, because they're still the best team in this. Make no mistake. And they need Liz Cambage to play 30-plus minutes per game. She needs to play foul-free for the first 5 minutes, understand what's happening. But, like I said, the Capitals' game plan was spot on. They've shown why Paul Goris is an absolute fantastic coach. They went at, it's ironic that the Southside Flyers' absolute strength is their absolute weakness. So they went at their strength and made it their weakness. And all credit to the Canberra Capitals. They outplayed them. They were a better team. They were much better defensively. And they attacked the weakness. And that was Liz Cambage's inability to be reliable.
Let's just touch on the next game, which was Sydney and Perth. Sydney taking out the W 74-67. A breakout game for Funda. She did an exceptional job. Shot the lights out in Cairns. Bunnings, 27 points off the bench, including 4 threes. Annalie Maley had a massive rebounding effort, a whopping 20 of her game 46 rebounds. So good effort to her. But the next one we're going to go in a bit more depth with is going to be Melbourne versus Adelaide. Now, before we chat about this game, I have to just do a shout out. I don't know if you guys watched the entire game. I know I really like the halftime stuff, so I do watch all the way through. Did you guys see the guy in the full orange suit? I think he must be like the courtside announcer for, on court up there in the stadium. I can't believe what he wore. Nathan, I had to send him a screenshot going, should we wear this when we do this job? Because Nathan and I often do this job. Any thoughts on the orange suit before we get into that game, guys? Nate, what do you reckon? Should we wear it?
You got to do what you can to stand out, don't you?
Oh my God. Honestly, shout out to him. I'll try and grab a picture and pop it up on our Two Way Talk podcast Twitter page, because honestly, he just deserved a shout out, but more importantly, of course, the games. So finally, the Adelaide Lightning are out of their mandatory quarantine, and all eyes were on whether they could have that little break in schedule, which meant that they were rested and ready to fire, or if their 2-for-2 momentum was lost. Now, sadly for Adelaide, they got squashed by a huge 40 points. The final score, 91-51. Pre-game, Maddie Garrick spoke about how her team had this massive sit-down during the week. They hashed out what was really going on, both on the court and off the court, with their team as a whole and as individuals as well. I imagine they burnt a little bit of sage, sang kumbaya, and it seemed to have worked, because Melbourne changed their starting lineup, which is something we spoke a lot about last round, with Maddie Garrick now back in the starting blocks, and they came together finally as a strong and cohesive unit. Kayla George put in a show with 16 points, 15 rebounds, and 6 assists, and it was great to see Tess Madgen by her side. 16 also, Maddie in form, sinking 15. Now, the Boomers shouldn't get too cocky, though, because now they're the ones with a week's break. It's just how the fixture gods put it all together. We're not going to see them again now until next Tuesday. We've seen what happens when a team has a week off, where though I know it's obviously different because they're not going to be stuck in a hotel room, but what can they do now that they've got a week off to make sure that they keep their momentum and also take a bit of advantage of the break?
I think it's probably a little bit different to what we saw with Adelaide, just because there's more experience, and look at the people that are on their team that might probably need a little bit of a break right now. I think the break came for Adelaide at the worst possible time, but Maddie Garrick still coming back from an ankle injury, having another week off right now just to break up the season. Ezzy McBeggar coming off a WNBA season, straight back into this. She can do with the break as well. I think it's a lot different to what we saw with Adelaide. The thing that I really liked about this team and what they were able to do is they got the ball moving again. We saw early on in the season that they got the ball moving from side to side, and they find the open player and knock down the shot. And sort of in those losses, the ball started to stick a little bit more. I think it coincided with Tess being out and not having a proper floor general out on the court at all times. But now we saw in that Adelaide game that the ball was moving side to side, a lot of free open shots. And the Boomers, I think we'll see this throughout the season. Teams are going to be on a bit of a roller coaster ride of the highs and the lows of what this condensed season is going to bring us. But I still think once it's all said and done, Melbourne's definitely going to be there at the pointy end of the season.
I think the break's great for them. You mentioned Maddie and Ezzy enjoying some time off. Tess Madgen, they initially thought her ankle was really bad that she missed with, and it might be a season ender. So it's great to see her coming back. A week for her to rehab, a week for them to just get some shots up and get their flow. Like, they're not quarantining for a week, Chris. They're going to come back like a mid-season retune after 3 weeks, and they're ready to go.
If I know Guy Malloy at all, and I think I do, that he'll give them 2 or 3 days off. He'll give them a little mini training camp, or he'll burn them down again, and they'll be ready to go. Even in watching that game, it was great for them to bounce back after losing 2 in a row. As I continually watch them, you're right, Wertho, that the ball moved a lot better than it did their last 2 games. I still wonder if they're missing that absolute genuine point guard that other teams have. Is it Tess Madgen? Is it Maddie Garrett? Who's going to be the point guard that down the stretch when the finals arrive, Guy Malloy says, we need the ball in your hands and we're going to run pick and roll with Kayla George or Ezzie McBeggar or get us into something. We're going to need to break a full court press. I'm sorry. I just think in watching them now for almost half a season, are they missing that absolute point guard?
How can it not be Tess? If you saw the first couple of games, what can't she do?
Well, she can, but is she a point guard?
I think she is. I think she showed in those games that she's got great vision, and I think she picked the times when to be aggressive offensively and look for her own shot. And I think she found Kayla George wide open in a lot of those early couple games. And when she was out of the lineup, that's when the ball was sticking. So 100% she is the point guard. I think she's a fantastic point guard, and one of the few point guards that can actually help on the rebounding side of things as well, and go in and get a big defensive board when you need it.
I imagine they'll get quite busy on the socials as well, taking in the sights of Queensland. It seems to be what all the teams are doing and making us all really jealous. Although Chris and I, of course, are in Melbourne and we do finally have some sunshine this week. So we shouldn't be too jealous, should we, Chris? All right, the next couple of games we're just going to touch on because there were so many games this round. We won't go into too much depth. It was Bendigo who took on Townsville. Now, Bendigo sadly went down to Townsville 51 to Agent 99. Well done to Nadine Payne and Megan Mackay, who were twinning on the night, both with 18 points, 8 rebounds and 2 assists. The next game was Perth, who had to cop it, losing by 40 points to the Flyers, with the Flyers' final score 62 to 102. And that wasn't even Southside's biggest lead of the night. At one point, they were in front by 44 points. Leilani Mitchell is the one who gets special mention in this game, scoring 20 for her team. And interesting to note with this one too, guys, is that Perth chose to rest 2 injured players because they specifically wanted them for their back-to-back game, which is going to be against the Caps the next night. We'll chat about that soon. So the next game is Bendigo versus Adelaide. Now, this was a game our team were all really interested to watch. So we all pretty much watched it on Chit Chat together. And while both teams had a good run around the court, Bendigo, sadly, still sitting with a big fat Dunkin' Donut over their heads. It was an up and down game most of the time, but after downing a case of, I'm assuming, Red Bull, the Lightning came out with an 0-16 run at the start of the 4th term. The Spirit fought back, losing the game by only 6 points with a final score of 83 to 89. Steph Talbot continued to impress with 22 points, 12 rebounds and 5 assists. And guard Ali Wilson was a star, finishing with 23, 6 and 4. The Spirit didn't leave empty-handed, though, with Tess Lavey scoring the highest number of points, I think, this season so far, with 33 big ones. And Carly Ernst notched up a double-double, 22 points and 10 rebounds. Chris, tell me this. Adelaide started off the season really strong. They then had their little COVID hiatus, and then they've returned now. 1 win, 1 loss. What do we think? Are they the real deal, or did they just get lucky this game?
Well, it was interesting. We spoke before they played their first 2 games. We wondered what they would come back like after their isolation period. Would they be contenders as the 2-0 start suggested, or would they be pretenders? Adelaide are pretenders. They're not going to be a contributor in these final series. They're not good enough. Their Bendigo are a long way off the mark. And sure, Tess Lavey had a great shooting game. Bendigo played up to the level that we expect them to play. But to let Bendigo come back, or to lead for a lot of the first quarter, and then to come back and make a run and put themselves in a position to win that basketball game down the 4th quarter, Adelaide aren't near where they need to be. They're not close to Townsville. They're not close to Canberra. They're not close to either Melbourne team. Adelaide missed the 4. Unfortunately, it's as simple as that.
Were they? Anything else you want to share?
Yeah. I think when we started this podcast that we all said that we wanted to be honest. This was a horrendous game. This was as bad as it gets. The amount of turnovers was hard to watch. Outside of Ali Wilson keeping Adelaide afloat when Steph Talbot was out of the game, and Tess Lavey doing what she does, you can see that these two teams aren't going to play finals. And Adelaide are 3-1 at the moment, but I think once they get to some of these bigger name teams, they're going to struggle really, really badly going forward. I do love watching Steph Talbot play. I actually really enjoyed Ali Wilson's game. I thought she was outstanding in that game. But after those two, then it really starts to drop off considerably. So for me, Adelaide are definitely pretenders. I really like Chris Lucas as a coach, but if that's what you're going to serve up versus Bendigo, who, let's face it, is the worst team in the competition by a long way, then yeah, I'm going to say that Adelaide are pretenders.
I like the strength of your opinion, positive or negative, always were though. But for mine, like, maybe it wasn't, and it's becoming clear that there's a top four and then the other teams that go with that. But I'm still fascinated watching these players that are in the Opals squad or fringe Opals and just seeing what they deliver night after night. There's often ones matching up on each other. So I love seeing Tess Lavey take an opportunity where she's coming out on a team where they knew they could potentially get a result. And we possibly even would have liked to see her shoot the ball more. Alex Wilson's having a great season. Steph Talbot showing class as well. So even in a game that might not be final shaping, or maybe two teams that aren't going to be part of the playoffs, I'm still loving seeing these players going that are really vying for a chance to be an Olympian come Tokyo in the middle of next year.
It's really interesting you say that, Nate, because as I watched that game, Tess Lavey had an incredible first half. And the mindset that she needed to have going into the second half was, I'm going to keep rolling. But as she came off mid-pick and roll, as she explored on her dribble early in the third quarter, all she was looking to do was to find teammates. It was almost as though she felt selfish for being so good and didn't have the killer instinct that Bendigo are absolutely craving for, to say, hey, I'm going to put you on my back. We're going to go and win a game. So Tess Lavey, for the first 6 or 7 minutes of the third quarter, became a distributor when she had more than 20 points at halftime. And it wasn't until, and then they fell behind. They went on Adelaide went on a 16-0 run with Tess looking to distribute. And it wasn't until they fell behind that she got in scorer's mode again. I think Tess Lavey, I think Carly Ernst, I think anyone on that Bendigo team who's having a night needs to be unapologetically selfish and say, while I'm having it, jump on my back. I'm going to shoot the ball every time I touch it, because I think Lavey could have had 50 in that night if she had the same mindset for the entire 40 minutes. And to be honest, as an Opal, and it's probably not going to be a role as a point guard for that Opals team, but she needs to show the ability to do that. And I was just a little bit disappointed in such a great game for Tess that she switched off a little bit and became a distributor in that third quarter.
So let me jump back to the question you asked before then, Chris, about Tess Madgen, where you're saying, is she a point guard? Like, Lavey still had 6 dimes. So when you're asking that question about Tess Madgen saying, is she a point guard, is that referring to, is she enough of a distributor? In which case, if that's Tess Lavey's role, if she has 50, they probably don't win that game. But if she can get some teammates involved and get some contributions across the board from some of her teammates, then maybe they get across the line.
The thing with Tess is her shooting the ball is Bendigo's best option. If she gives it up to a lesser scorer, she's reducing the percentage of Bendigo scoring that possession in most time. Tess Madgen's very different. Tess Madgen's on a loaded team full of talent, and she needs to manage a team, understand when it's time for her to go, when it's time for any of her teammates to go, when to get into offense, when to go quick. So very different teams. The Melbourne Boomers are going to challenge for a championship. Bendigo are struggling to win, or they may not win a game this season. And if they've got the opportunity, which they had against Adelaide on the weekend or during the week, she needs to grab that, have 50, and be apologetic in the post-game meeting, not in the middle of the game when they fall behind on a 16-0 run.
And lucky last of the games that are played so far for this round 3 was top of the table, Caps to rather far down the ladder, Perth. Perth sat out some of their players with a clear intention to come out firing in this one, and they put up a good fight, actually, leading at halftime. And while it was a good contest most of the game, let's just jump straight to that last 24 seconds of the game. Scores are locked up at 70 apiece. Caps have the ball, and it's a 5-second differential between the game clock and the shot clock. Talia has the ball, throws it to number 5, Jade Melbourne, in the corner, who doesn't blink. She just has a crack at the 3 shot, and she gets it in. Now, I can only guess, Chris and Wertho, I don't obviously have a clue what it's like playing at an elite level, but I imagine a game is stressful at any given time. When you know that the game is riding on that very single shot, and that 3 being the shot it is, I imagine the ante goes up quite a bit. She did get that 3 in, and that's pretty cool because now, yes, we can confirm it. Now the Caps have their 6th straight win. They're undefeated this season. Kelsey Griffin had that winning mentality all game, scoring the Caps 21 points and 12 rebounds. Katie Ebzery for the Lynx, 17 points and 5 assists. But let's talk all about Jade Melbourne. She's so much fun to watch. And at the end of the match, her coach actually turned around. Paul Goris said that he doesn't coach her. He just lets her go and do what she needs to do. Wertho, is that how you would go about having someone like Jade Melbourne on your team?
Yeah, I think you just got to let someone like that go. And even though she's young, she's got to learn from her mistakes. And she didn't really play a really good game to this point. But as one of my more friendlier coaches once said, it might not be your game, but it could be your moment. Oh, that guy is on the stream too, Chris. And it just sort of reminds me of when Chris drew up the game winner in Perth. That wasn't for me, but I took it anyway. But so I think you get in those moments, and I think it takes a certain individual to be able to shoot that shot. I don't think that moment is for everyone. And so for me, I think she's a fantastic young talent. She's a lot of fun to watch, and it wasn't her game to that point, but she did make it her moment. And I think that's what really counts.
Well, and not to take anything away, but as you guys know, you can shoot that shot a little more freely when scores are tied and it's not win or lose. It's just you let it go, it goes down, and we win. If we miss, we might go to overtime. But I think Jade Melbourne, and let's extend it a little more, Maddie Rocci, who's played her way into the Opals squad for the Tokyo Olympics. Talia Tupea has been scratching around the Opals for a while. As we started this season, you guys were talking about the Caps drop-off might be the fact they're losing Kia Nurse, they're losing their import guards. It's these young guards' level of play that's kept the Capitals rolling, and now the big thing we see this game, Kelsey Griffin comes off the bench for a double-double. She's starting to find her form. And now the Caps are really rolling. 21 and 12 for Kelsey Griffin is ominous for any team around this league.
Canberra have been the form team of the last, week and a half. And we wondered how big an impact Kelsey Griffin coming back, and particularly Kelsey, would make. And it's been huge. Again, they're a
I think we may have lost Chris for a moment.
Wertho, was that you just trying to pause him so you could get in? He just
and I'm so glad he's gone. No.
Do you know, I'm sorry that he's not paused with a beer in his hand, because I know there's one right there, or a couple
professional
right there
defensive unit.
He'll be back. Wertho, what do you reckon?
Well, hi, Chris. You were paused and so now we're going to talk over you.
No, you're not. Yeah, I'm going to say what I'm going to say. We wondered.
Is there a way we can actually make that pause happen where we control it? Because that would be occasionally to get
we wondered what Kelsey Griffin being out would do for the Caps, and we thought that they were a long way off missing their import backcourt from last season. But I think the last couple of weeks have really shown how great a player Kelsey Griffin is. I mean, we knew, but in this environment, it's been reiterated. And they're the most professional defensive team They've got structures that can win this competition. They dismantled the Southside Flyers. And the fact that we mentioned Jade Melbourne hitting the game-winning 3, everybody has been given that green light. And to bring your point up at the start, Candy, I think any player needs to be given the green light to play basketball in the last few minutes of a game. It doesn't need structure. It needs read and react basketball, and that's what Paul Goris is instilling in this group. They've all got the license to shoot it if it's the right shot. They created a wide open shot for Jade. Absolute full credit to her. I love the fact that she shot it. I love more that she made it. But on top of everything, to me, it speaks of the culture of the Canberra Capitals.
And don't often, when someone hits their shot to win the game like that, you lose what's happened a couple of plays prior. Don't lose Tupaya hitting big threes leading up to that. And we talk about how good Kelsey Griffin is, but the fact she's been out shows how good Paul Goris is as a coach to have this group playing as a unit, and what these young guards are doing to put that team well and truly on the top of the ladder. As we do jump into the ladder, we see that the Caps at 6-1 now are sending a real message to the rest of this group. 6 straight after dropping to the Lightning off the back of a massive Steph Talbot game to open the season. The Capitals are really opening up against the rest of the group there. The Lightning still hanging on after their break. They've got some games to come, but they're going to need to get rolling to stay within that top 4, which is starting to shape like it will be the Flyers, the Fire and the Boomers.
And we'll move straight into our next two-way talk topic. And this one's actually quite close to Chris Anstey's heart specifically, but I feel like everyone's going to have something to say in our team. One of our friends of our show is The Basketball Show. You can catch them on KO. And there was something that they brought up on their show this week that we're going to talk off the back of. Have a listen to this.
Now, Shane, we've had a little bit of negative feedback on social media.
What?
A couple of perhaps bitter or ignorant people, you could say, sort of suggesting that perhaps you and the likes of a Chris Anstey and that kind of thing didn't really get involved or appreciate women's basketball until your daughters started playing.
Now, before we give you a chance to answer this one, Chris, because I know you've got a bit you want to say off the back of it, we were so thrilled that you were on SEN this week with the wonderful Sammy Edmonds and giving a little spruik to our show. But the good thing is you actually addressed this exact thing on that show, which was on air before the basketball show went live. So have a listen to the response that Chris had about why we actually do what we do here at Two Way Talk.
Hey, tell us, Chris, you've been busy with the Two Way Talk WNBL podcast you mentioned before the ad break. Tell us a bit about this.
Women's basketball and women's sport in general is something that I've been, I suppose, emotionally connected to even more in the last 6 or 7 years since my daughter has begun her basketball pathway. And the more you're involved in it, the more you realise they lack resources, financial exposure, just people talking about them. And when you get it, the evaluation oftentimes of our most elite female athletes is what they're doing away from the sport, not what they're doing on the court or in their field of play. So we wanted to get a podcast going where we highlighted them as professional athletes, spoke about what they were doing, critically analyse them as well. It's not all just backpatting and telling everyone how great they're going.
Yeah.
I think we need to shine a light sometimes, especially at the end, especially in a period of time when there isn't a lot of other sport going on. But we need to shine a light on how great the WNBL is, evaluate them, and it's been a lot of fun. I'm doing it with Mark Worthington, who a lot of basketball people will know, Candy Hertz and Nathan Strempel. So yeah, Two-Way Talk, join in. We'd love you to come and have a listen and support the girls.
So just so everyone knows, in case they weren't aware of it, this is a show that the four of us and our wonderful tech friend, Brad Gibb, decided to put together off our own bat. It's not like we've got anything commercial as yet behind us. This is something that we dedicate a lot of time to do a couple of episodes a week. And we do it for exactly what Chris was saying. So to have a tweet like that come out and to be addressed on the basketball show, Chris, definitely created an emotional response for you. Do you want to talk off the back of it about what you think?
Well, yeah, there've been more than one. And I suppose it's really easy. There are always critical tweets, there are critical comments, there are people evaluating your reason to do things. And as you said, the reason we do this, every game, the WNBL season this year is live on television. We can watch it. So we can shine a light. As viewers, we can watch every game. Of course, I've got an emotional attachment to women's basketball because my daughter Izzy plays. She's my absolute favourite basketball player in the world. I've coached her for a couple of years, but more importantly, I've coached women's basketball now for 4 years. The more involved you get into anything, you realise the shortcomings, the difficulties, and the challenges that anything has, and women's sport is exactly that. But more importantly, I started playing basketball late. I mean, I came to the sport in 1993, and I walked into the old Albert Park Stadium. Ray Tomlinson was the coach of the WNBL team. Lindsay Gaze was the coach of the NBL team. To me, they were equal. And I'll throw an old school name at you. Emma Clements, who was one of the younger Melbourne Tigers players, remains one of my really close friends, and we spent a lot of time at the Tigers. Alison Cook was a superstar. Michelle Chandler was starting point guard. The Tomlinsons have been involved. I've known women's basketball as long as I've known men's basketball, because I didn't grow up with the sport. But the ability now, having been involved in men's sport through my playing career, like I said, to shine a light on the WNBL, to shine a light on women's basketball competitions at lower levels, the NBL 1 competitions around Australia, the Big V competitions here in Melbourne. It's something I'm passionate about. Now, if my daughter's not involved and she's about to go off and play college basketball for 4 years, I'll still be involved. But I suppose, Wertho, I'll throw it back to you. Mate, you've got 2 sons, and you're sitting here with all of us doing a women's basketball podcast. Tell me why you're involved. This might answer the question even better.
Well, I got involved with women's basketball at a really young age. My mum she's a basketball fan first and foremost, and one of the first memories that I have with basketball was not only the Perth Wildcats but the Perth Breakers back then, with Michelle Timms, Tully Bevilacqua, who was then Tully Cook, Marianne Vlahoff, that whole crew. I watched them just as much as I watched the Wildcats. And so I guess when I started my basketball journey, the Breakers were just as important as the Wildcats for me. I remember having a poster of the Breakers players, maybe because I had a crush on Marianne Vlahoff at the time. but I had a poster of the Breakers girls on my wall next to the poster of my Wildcats, which will be hard for a lot of people to believe, knowing who I am now. And then you go on your NBL career, and even while I was still playing for the Cairns Taipans, I was coaching the women's state league team in the QBL. I have a lot of good friends that come out of that still play WNBL, that are playing overseas currently, that have played WNBL. So I guess it's always been something that I've always watched all the way throughout my career. And to be able to sit here, give the women another platform to be spoken about, as Chris said, on SEN, good, bad, critically, I think it just is another way that we can show our support towards us showing what we already knew, that this is one of the best leagues in the world that gets minimal coverage, and we're just trying to shine a little bit more light on a fantastic league.
What I will say as well, sorry, Nate, before you go, is that even back, and there's a lot spoken now about females getting into coaching in a male sport. Years ago, when Brian Gorgon was the head coach of the Magic and the Titans, we had Laurie Chiswick as our assistant coach, and I want to give a shout out to Laurie, who's 20 years ago, set foot into a male-dominated sport. And probably not many people would recognise her as being one of the first female assistant coaches in a professional male league. So we've had female basketball people around us all our playing lives. And again, we love shining a light.
And I want to speak to this as well, and often I defer to the opinion of the dual Olympians that sit on the other screen next to us. But for me, as someone who grew up playing rep basketball, I think if you're any basketball that's worth their salt, you actually respect women's basketball as pretty early in your career. And I remember really clearly playing Division 1 rep basketball as an under-16, and we trained against the Adelaide Lightning growing up in Adelaide. That was where it was. And I remember so clearly my 15-year-old teammate, someone blocked a girl out of bounds and yelled at her, because that's what you do when you're 15, because that's what you see in the NBA. And Joe Hill, an absolute stalwart at the Adelaide Lightning over the years, already had a black eye from, she must have caught an elbow somewhere, and yells out, she goes, "Hey, number 50, you want one to match it?" And my teammate sulked over the bench and didn't go anywhere near Joe Hill or the paint for the rest of that training. But as a 15-year-old, you immediately like, these women are incredible athletes. I'm talking about a great Adelaide Lightning team that had Rachel Spawn, had Joe Kill, had Jay Kingy, Narelle Lindsay, Tracy Beattie. This was an incredible championship-winning Lightning team. I think Sam Woosnam was playing for the Lightning by that stage as well. And immediately I'm like, these women can play. And basketball, like, is unlike any other sport where you grow up as a junior and you're playing under 16 Division 1 on one court, and the court opposite, the under 16 one, girls are playing at the exact same time. Same platform, same spotlight. Probably hurt my attention span on my games because I was too busy watching the other court. Probably hurt my career going where it did. And so, like, I tour my girl dad. I have a 4-year-old daughter sitting in the other room trying to poke her nose in here. But I have followed and loved women's basketball well before I was a father of a daughter. And my daughter may not be a Shyla Heal or may not be as easy Anstey as she grows up. Who knows? But I will love and follow this league and the incredible athletes that are in it, and anything we can do from our profile to shine a light on the WNBL athletes. And I've been involved with the league, commentating WNBL. I MC game days and events for Dandenong Rangers well before I was a father to a daughter. This is an incredible league, and it is a sad scenario in Australian sport that they have not to this point got the same attention that our men have. But I love the trajectory that the NBL is going on, and as we're seeing that getting more and more attention, and I really hope this season, and this is exactly why we passionately give our opinion on this league, because we'd love to draw more attention to what these phenomenal female athletes are doing ahead of the Tokyo Olympics, where they may well go and win our first ever gold medal in women's basketball at a senior level, which would be pretty exciting. So
I'll say this, Nate. I'll say this. Chris and I have both been lucky enough to play at the highest level. Chris is a little bit higher than I have, but to be able to reach an Olympics, obviously there's a certain level of training that you have to do, which tests you physically, mentally, and all that. Since we've both finished playing basketball and gone with a career change, and both of us now coach, we've both done our fair share of individuals with players that are trying to make Opals teams, WNBA players and all that. For the average viewer to sit down and watch a game and to make a comment that they would be able to beat some of these people is absolute ridiculous. They have no idea. Some of the girls that have been through workouts that say, all right, put me through the ringer. Like, I want to, this one's got to hurt. And whatever you say, they just do it. No questions asked, no complaining. They work their ass off to get to the position that they're in. And it goes not only for women's basketball, women's sport in general. If you play at a professional level, you have to be unbelievably disciplined to where you're at. I'm fortunate that I have a partner that's in AFLW now, a different sport, but I hear a lot of comments about AFLW and how they can't do a lot of things. And then if you try and train with my partner, I guarantee you're vomiting on the side of the road because you can't keep up. And it's just goes to show that a lot of people have zero idea what these women put themselves through. We only, like most athletes, get to see what they do on the weekend, but the professionalism that they're at now and where they get their bodies, the way that they train, the way that they eat, all that sort of stuff, there is no way that the average Joe walking off the street can compare to it, because seeing it firsthand, I've got absolute admiration for all the women across all the sports and what they do. And like we said from the get-go, if we can just shine a little bit of light on the WNBL and the gem that it's been for so long in this world, then I think we're doing the right thing.
Thanks, guys.
And well said, both of you. And just one more little story, very short, that I'd like to mention as well. I mentioned Laurie Chiswick, and a little bit as well. This is, I suppose, showing how forward-thinking Brian Goorjian was back in the day. Shelley Gorman used to train with us at the Titans, and she was just one of the group. And when I say just, I mean she competed with us. Every drill we did, Shelley did. She was getting ready for a WNBA and Opal's career. And we loved having her as a part of our men's team. And, you know, even from then at a very young age, very early into my basketball career, there was that level of respect. Moving forward, and what I'll probably finish with my opinion here is that you're right, Wertho, we've both played for the Boomers over the years, and we're still seeking our first medal. And there is some sense of jealousy and admiration for what the Opals have been able to do. They're world class. They've won medals. They're on par with the best in the world. So we love covering it. We respect them like crazy, and we'll keep doing it.
Thank you, guys. All of you well said. And so on that note, to wrap up that topic, which we didn't intend to go that long, but I think it shows our passion to all of the athletes of the WNBL and let's say all of the athletes in all of our professional women's sports in Australia. Thank you, because full disclosure, a couple of us are girl dads. So thank you to the inspiration you are to our daughters and young daughters all around the country. We appreciate what you do. As we move forward, our next topic is looking at ownership and contrasting the NBL to the WNBL. John Wall, an NBL All-Stars, now bought into the Southeast Melbourne Phoenix. Gentlemen, can we see a day where an NBA player, or a WNBA player for that matter, starts to buy into some WNBL teams as we see it grow?
I would love it to happen. And I think our most visible owner of a WNBL team and contributor to the league is Jerry Ryan, and he's been incredible. This is part of the WNBL being streamed every game, live on ABC, live on Fox Sports, is we need to put them on a platform for potential owners to think, hey, this is an incredibly undervalued investment right now. I want to be a part of this. I want to help it grow. Absolutely. I don't know who it is. WNBL players, NBA players, WNBA players. Let's keep putting it on a platform. Let's keep seeing who's interested, because I'll tell you what, when it comes to undervalued commodities as a sponsor and as an owner, that's exactly what the WNBL is to me. And if we see every game on TV year to year, it's just going to keep growing.
I think it's fantastic that John Wall is just another addition of NBA players that are buying into the Phoenix and the NBL in general. And if you would have said 5 years ago that John Wall would have ownership in a basketball team, you know, I think a lot of people would say you're kidding. So to see the progression so quickly of the NBL to where it is now, for this to actually happen, I think there's definitely a reason that the WNBL could follow suit. Build up with the live coverage that they've got and showing the games, get a bit more noticed in what they're doing, and then hopefully someone of that ilk would come through and buy a team as well.
Perfect lead into our final play. So we're moving away from the WNBL, which is, of course, our focus for this next couple of weeks. But we're going to talk a little bit about some rumors and facts with the NBL. And the first one, I have to say, I had such a lucky pleasure last year being able to go up to Brisbane every week to cover the broadcast for the NBL. And I got to watch firsthand in the stadium what Will Magnay put down every game. And can I say, it lit up the stadium every time. The Armory was a ball of fun. Lots of rumors flying all through the season. Quite a few months later, Chris Anstey, there was some big news today. Rumor or truth? What's going on with Will Magnay?
No, well, Will Magnay, we said months ago that Will Magnay would be in the NBA next season. We wouldn't see him in an NBL uniform again, and that's proven to be true. The New Orleans Pelicans have signed Will Magnay to a two-way deal. He'll play with Zion Williamson. He's going to have his NBA experience, his NBA opportunity, and he's earned it. There were multiple teams, and a couple of weeks ago we thought it was going to be the Dallas Mavericks, and they were certainly one of the teams that were interested. But Will Magnay gets his opportunity. Great for him, great for the NBL, and as much as anything, great for the NBL pathway, because he came from being a development player at the Bullets to a rostered player on their NBL team to an NBA player. And as we mentioned, I think last week, that if you put Will Magnay in this year's draft class, I would probably rate him as maybe the fourth best centre in it. Would have made him a first round draft pick. So I think the New Orleans Pelicans have got a steal. They're underpaying him or underpaying what they would have had to have paid him if he had have been drafted. And I think he'll do great.
I actually had a quick chat today to one of the Brisbane Bullets owners, and I said, how do you feel? How excited? What's the thoughts? And he said, that's always the plan. Like, it's always the plan. When we have players that good, we want them to get to the NBA. Is that what you guys think is true? If, every owner's like, well, as much as I'd love to have you here in the NBL, if we can get you to the NBA, that's a better outcome.
Looks good on the resume, but I can guarantee you that the Brisbane Bullets would be loving to have Will Magnay on their roster instead of him being in the NBA. I think it's the right thing to say, but if you're trying to tell me that someone says we want Will Magnay to go, they're kidding themselves. I think they're happy for Will. I'm not saying that they're not happy for him, but we saw how much of an anchor he was for that team last year, and him and Hodgie having a nice little tandem, the twin towers down there. A lot of emphasis goes back now on Hodgie and not fouling going forward because he doesn't have Will Magnay to back him up.
Well, he has Harry Froling, and I think that was the writing on the wall where people spoke about not knowing what he'd do. Just the fact that Brisbane signed Harry Froling told us, or it should have told us, that the NBA thing was real. They wouldn't have brought in Harry if he was going to stay. So I think we've all known for a lot longer than what maybe most people have spoken about.
Well, speaking of bringing someone in, there's some teams that need coaches. The Sydney Kings are searching around. The Jack Jumpers just announced two they're going to do in just after last episode. We're talking about a potential local option. They've talked about doing an international search for the best possible candidate. The Illawarra Hawks announced an international search last season. They ended up with Matt Flynn. Where do you see the Jack Jumpers going on that?
I have a name for you that we haven't spoken about yet that I've heard from a couple of sources, and if this was to be true, would be an absolutely incredible hire for the Jack Jumpers. Phil Handy.
Ooh.
He has been involved in the NBA for a long time. He played in the NBL. He's one of the best development coaches in the world and aspires to be a head coach. He may not get that opportunity in the NBA over the next 2 or 3 years. So rumor is he may take his opportunity to get his head coaching experience in Tasmania, get back to the NBA in a few years' time and be a head coach there. But I've had first-hand experience of Phil. He worked out Chris Golding when I had him at the Melbourne Tigers. He is he's a fantastic coach. And if that rumor is true, he would be an incredible acquisition for the Jack Jumpers.
Well, I hope your sources are true and your sources aren't barbecue and tomato sauce. But I think that they'll fall straight back on to Anthony Stewart and the job that he's been doing down there for a long period of time. But if they could get Phil Handy, I think that would be an amazing get for them. Obviously, a championship with Toronto, goes to the Lakers, get a championship with the Lakers. I can't see LeBron James letting him leave.
Don't forget Cleveland.
And Cleveland. LeBron James has got a big say in Phil Handy's career, believe it or not, and it might come to where the Lakers aren't performing well enough come mid-season, and Phil might just be risen up through the ranks a la Tyronn Lue a couple of years ago in Cleveland. So I know LeBron speaks very, very highly of him, but if the Jack Jumpers could get him, that would be probably the biggest get alongside with Gorgon that the NBL has ever had.
Sorry, Candy. Now, speaking of big gets, we spoke about a potential list of Sydney Kings head coaches last episode, and we went through our names and we had a few stock standard and a few left of centre. I just want to add one more that's been a little tiny sneaky whisper. Brett Brown back to the Kings. I'll leave it at that.
Oh, drop that bomb and walk away. They talk about the NBL in general, guys. I don't know how much everyone's caring about checking their phone every 20 seconds to see if the NBL have put a message out about what's happening this season. But I am very interested to know. It's something I do, it's a lot of work that I do every year, and it's obviously something I love a lot. So every 2 minutes, I'm like back in high school, checking my phone, asking anyone if they know anything, gossip around. Here's what I've condensed down from all my different, not barbecue sources were though, but all my different sources. And the latest rumor I've heard is that it's going to be Melbourne hub type scenario. It's going to be something like 25 games within a really short period of time, starting with a throwdown between the two Melbourne teams. And then after that really tight season, not terribly dissimilar to what we're seeing with the WNBL, there's going to also be a home and away season. This is the latest that I've heard from all different sources that I've put together in a neat little package for us, which would mean it's going to be significantly more games than what we see in a normal regular home and away season of 14 games each or whatever it is. It'd be that whole little tournament and then the home and away season. Anyone heard something different, or anyone got any thoughts on that rumour?
Well, interestingly, before either Mark or Chris jump in, the A-League have just released their fixture and they're having no hub. They're looking to travel. So it's just exciting as Melbourne has just recently come out of lockdown to think that potentially we are looking back at sporting leagues where home and away seasons is possible, and we're seeing what life might be like on the other side of COVID.
I think the reason they wanted to start with the Melbourne hub was just to lock some games away in case, similar to what happened with the WNBL, there is a situation where we need to pause for a minute and maybe delete some games. Then they have some in the bank. Plus, we've got the issue that WA isn't exactly confirmed to be open yet. And we've got the New Zealand teams that need to be based somewhere. So that's why I think this rumour feels quite likely, just to kick off things and get some in the bank and then keep going.
Yeah,
sorry, Chris.
Hearing the same and think it will be a great decision. The reason we may be waiting for that final schedule is we may be waiting on the Australian Open dates. And it wouldn't surprise me for one of the opening games of the season to be the open air game between both Melbourne teams at Melbourne Arena on the second week of the Australian Open to really showcase the start of the season, have other games going on around Melbourne at the same time. And as you say, once COVID's under control, and we hope it is, spread out and play around the rest of the country. But if that's the case, I think it'll be a great decision by the NBL.
I wish the NBL would just tell us what's going on. I hate being having to chase information and not being in the know. So hurry up, stop being committophobes and just tell us what's happening in NBL, please.
With Will Magnay being a laid out for the Bullets, is there any chance the Bullets give Nick Kyrgios a singlet for those opening games?
That'd be great.
Good. He might not even be at Melbourne Arena on the second week of the Australian Open. Basketball court or tennis court.
Well, we're going to wrap up now to have a look at what's happening for the rest of round 3. There's only a couple of games to go, just a huge, 5 more games. This has been literally the longest round, and it is the longest round with 12 games in total. 5 versus Southside, Adelaide versus Sydney, Bendigo v Caps, Adelaide v Southside, Flames v Fire. I'm not sure there's any game in there that's completely standing out to me. Any game that anyone's super keen for us to be on WhatsApp and chat to each other with?
Townsville against the Flyers again. I want to see Shyla Hill and Lauren Nicholson take on the Flyers again. I want to see if Liz Cambage can dominate inside like she should against the Flyers. Fascinated to see that game.
All right. Well, thank you so much for joining us on a Friday. A big cheers again to everyone. It's so nice to have you with us, and it's so great to have you back, Wertho. We missed you to pieces. I missed you. The rest of the boys said they didn't, but I missed you. I missed you. We are Two Way Talk Podcast. Please make sure you follow us and subscribe on Apple, on Spotify as well. You can find us on Twitter, Twitch, YouTube, and Instagram, of course, on Facebook too. We have so much fun here. We'd love a bit of support. If you've got some feedback for us or you want to rate us on Apple Podcasts, please do that, and we can try and see if someone maybe wants to give us some beer next week. What do you guys think?
That would probably improve our content.
I think it could a little bit. Chris Anstey, Mark Worthington, Nathan Stremple. I'm Candy Hertz. Thank you so much for joining us. Two Way Talk Podcast. We'll catch you next out. Bye.